Hi there. This is the last video on the subject of exceptions and events, in this case the second video on the subject of events. We're just going to look at a code example of events. Personally, I like thinking of it as a four-step process, so let's walk through those four steps. The first thing we need is in the business logic, the event is being declared. And so this is just saying an event. You're going to need friends so it can be accessed by the presentation level. So some kind of access specifier that would allow that is necessary. It's going to be passed a payroll object, which is this class itself. The event is called overtime. Down in the FindPay method, we can see where it's actually raised. The FindPay method is the same as it has been, where regular pay is calculated like this for people who have worked 40 hours or less. And then if they haven't worked 40 hours or less, it's going to calculate their overtime pay. But then at the end, it's going to raise the overtime event. It does that by just calling raise event overtime, and it's passing itself as a parameter. So that's pretty simple. When someone has worked overtime, that event will be raised. What that event does, by the way, I should show you the form. It's got one label added now. It's just there to indicate that a worker has worked overtime. So if someone was using this form to enter a bunch of overtime values, it would flag for them the people who had done overtime so they could be more aware of it. So on the actual form, most of this again is going to be the same, but here's the third step of the process. We've got the pay object being declared, and it's declared with the with events keyword here. So it's going to be listening for events. The button calculate click procedure is entirely the same. What we do need to keep in mind though is that the FindPay method is where that event is being raised. So we'll see that when this line happens, that's when that event could take place. But it's listening for that event, just like your program listens to mouse clicks, and so we need an event handler. Here's our event handler. It's called overtime handler. It is passed a payroll object, and for a pay object, the one that declared above, it handles the overtime event. And all it's going to do is set the overtime label to visible. It's tangential, but you need to also be aware that other times it should be invisible. So if we look at this clear results event, I should just show you this quickly. It's not documented, which is a bit unfortunate, but you can see here, this one's set up to handle multiple different events. So if the hours are changed or if the rate is changed, it's going to clear the output, which is important. A lot of people have been not doing that. And it's also going to hide that overtime label. So if a worker works overtime and then I change it for any reason, it should then hide that result so I don't confuse it with the next worker. Anyway, let's run it and see what happens here. Somebody who works lots of overtime. And they're going to work 90 hours and they're going to have a pay rate of 20. Let's actually quickly put in a breakpoint though, right where the event takes place. Alright, so we'll calculate this person's pay, and it's invalid, so that never takes place. It's handled with an exception. Let's enter something valid. We know we can work up to 60 hours. Let's put that in. Now it's in this decision logic. It's going to calculate their overtime pay, and then the event is raised, and so we should see now on the form after this line that that label will become visible, and otherwise it's going to work normally. And so we can see the label is now visible, and when I change it, it should be cleared. Perfect. So that's an example of events, and that should be everything you need related to events in our course.